because I was in head office before, and he's an auditor in one of the working unit that how to say Ministry of Pertahanan, Defense, Ministry of Defense, and what's just Azung for that?
Attorney.
Yeah, attorney. Yeah, high attorney. So he was an auditor there, and his boss, the Echelon 1 in this auditor working unit, has many relatives in those ministries, and he said that I think I am a white auditor. It means white, that honest. Then I think my boss think I disturb the stability between
Family.
Yeah, family. So now I don't know why suddenly I got a decree to be moved to Papua. So it's a punishment for me. That's what he said. So some of respondents in Papua admit that they are being punished by being relocated from head office to the most eastern part. Because if you know, we have to fly about 7 or 8 hours from Jakarta to Papua. And the cost is very expensive. Actually, the ticket to go back and forth is more expensive from Jakarta to London. Yeah. So that's what interesting fact that I found. Thank you.
Do they have a sort of istilah that there's a
for being punished? Yeah. They,
sort of lahan basah dan lahan kering?
oh yeah, they do have that lahan basah and lahan kering, and also the same similar what Indah said. We also have terminology of white auditor, black auditors, and gray auditors. So it still happens in our organization, and it is difficult to combat actually. Yeah.
Do you want to add it?
Yeah, when you talk about wet places, it emerged from my data, but from the interview, not from the images. And especially when they talk about the condition before the change. And interestingly, they didn't talk about it after the change, which I come to my conclusion that change can limit or reduce the space for corruption. There were wet places in the past before the change, but not after. And also what you said or what you asked about whether employee need to pay to get the wet places. In the past, it was yes. So my participant talk about how they play. They call it bermain, yeah, play. They play, which means they pay to get placed in the wet places. And then after they get places there, this is in the past, right? After they get places in the wet places, they play again, play with the taxpayers, so they can get the corruption money. With the money, they felt the pleasure, they felt the power. With power, they want to secure their place in that wet places, and they play again together. So it's like a circle. Yeah, that was in the past, but they didn't tell me how much they pay, and I didn't ask. And also in the past, they said that it was like korupsi berjamaah, which means congregation corruption in the past, because everybody did that. So from the lowest level to the top level, they all did that. But after the change, there was no congregation corruption. It became individual. Like Gaius did, he did it individual. So the change has limited, and also has changed the magnitude of corruption from group into individual.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm sorry I missed the first two presenters.
Yeah. Possibly introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Diana Suhadiman. I'm from International Water Management Institute based in Laos, but I come from Indonesia originally. And I did also some research on corruption back in 2008 on the water sector. So I really like the different types of corruption that you highlight here and discuss and illustrate. But my question is, to what extent you also link it to the very idea of political corruption? When the state you implied in your explanation that there is this issue of institutionalized rules that push a lot of people to be grey ducks, despite whether or not they want to do corruption, because that's just the rules of how government or how certain organization is run by certain leaders. So and you mentioned the issue of the importance of leadership in terms of organizational change, but to what extent is that notion also linked to political corruption?
In my case,
Perhaps we'll take three,
Oh,
and then
okay.
we can,
All right.
you'll gather yourself.
Yeah,
Just introduce yourself, please.
I'm Gilbert. I'm studying here. I'm a master student in Oxford. I'm studying development studies.
Studying what?
Development studies.
Development studies.
Yeah. I have a question about the last presentation about the visual media and organizational change. It seems to me that you're trying to answer an objective question regarding the relationship between social organization change and corruption, but you use like a method that is assessing subjectivity. So I was wondering, what is the advantage of your method compared to like a regular anonymous survey or anonymous open question? It seems like using your method, in psychological research, it's perfectly justified because you can see different perspectives. But in management research, to what extent that can this refer to some relationship between social change and corruption? And moreover, if I look at the image of the duck, can we perfectly sure that the person that that drew this duck refer to the black duck as a corruption? It could also be the case that the black duck is the person that she doesn't like, something like that. So this kind of complexity and subjectivity make it more difficult in my opinion compared to like a regular survey. Yeah.
We'll take one more. Yeah.
And kind of related to the visual.
Could you introduce yourself?
I'm Melissa. I'm a PhD student in Cambridge Edupolitics, and I'm interested in also using visual images. Might have to do like a focus group, and I'm wondering what kinds of complementary qualitative approaches you can use with visual images, and how do you convince people or get people to agree to draw something?
Okay, so the first is the political context in which this is taking place, and the role of leaders, the role of parties, the role of the
yeah.
political direction.
Thank you for your question. My focus was not on the political corruption, so I don't address that in my research because I'm looking at more micro organizational corruption. So I didn't talk about I didn't ask about political corruption to my participant. But political setting did affect the change because there was reform in Indonesia in 1998, which also that there was so the public want the public sector to change, and it also affect it including the DGT, the Directorate General of Taxes. But I don't look at the political corruption, so I can't answer your question. I'm sorry, I apologize. Is it okay? Okay. So for
Would either of you two like to say?
Maybe I could add some more. Similar to what Indah said, I do not focus my research to the political sector, but it comes up automatically from the respondents, and I think it is interesting. Maybe later on, if I already analyze all the data, maybe I can link it to the political corruption that you said. Because for your information, the audit board of Indonesia, we have the nine members. The top level of the leaders in our organizations are 7. Sorry, not 7. It used to be 7, but now 9. 9 members. They are all elected by the
Parliament.
Parliament, yeah. They are all elected by the parliament, and the parliament comes from the political parties. So now, currently, all of those members are come from political parties, and it automatically bring their vested interest to our organization. It did show up from the interview when the people said, well, these people who stay there in the head office because they have a good relationship and they can follow what the boss said. If the boss said this one, they can follow it. If the boss said change the opinion, they can do that. That's why they stay there forever. It comes up in the interview. So maybe it will be good to that more, to digger more in that response and can be linked into the political later on. Thank you for that input.
Would you like to add anything?
Some of these groups that I've studied, they do during the election time be mobilized to support certain candidates sometimes, like in Jakarta and also in Riau Islands especially. Yeah, so normally if the one that they support win, there'll be a meeting between the leader of that group with for example, when I study about Batam, with the mayor of Batam is very closely linked with one of the group. So they have meetings, and I think there'll be like relocation. Okay, you can secure this area. We will have this project. Normally there is dredging projects, so like dredging for ports, making it deeper, and that will be allocated to one of the group to secure the project when it happens. So normally, if the one that they support win, they will get more project, more things to do for their members.
Yeah, there's an interesting parallel with Britain, because when Britain became a major power in terms of its expenditure, it also set up a committee for examining public accounts, and that was actually a bipartisan, a bi-party committee, and it became highly politicized and in fact imploded. But it was set up in 1691, ran for 6 years. But the difference there was that these people were paying taxes. These were their taxes which were being distributed. So they
Yeah, but I think it's very interesting to see how this institutionalized corruption goes beyond the government's structure. It goes through like the society, so it becomes a culture in itself, how to in governings.
Yeah. Because corruption is like some of my participants said, it takes two to tango. So,
And it makes
yes, I mean, even though the tax office has changed, but if like the people in the society still have the mindset to like I don't want to pay taxes that high, I want to pay lower, and they might try to bribe the tax officer, so it takes two to tango.
But now they have to find the black one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think what was interesting about that drawing and the way it was described was that when they talked about the water used to be filthy, so all the ducks got dirty because the water was filthy. That's your political corruption right there. That's your embedded structural thing. But now they're implying that, oh, now the water's clean, that this organisational change has somehow removed that political corruption there, which I find hard to believe, but so that's the implication of those data, right?
Yeah.
So now you only have the oknum, which completely changes the way that you approach, wrongly I think, but it changes the way that you approach corruption. Now we just go after the bad people because we assume that the structural stuff is dealt with.
Yeah, there were two other questions. Gilbert's question about the nature of your visual images and whether this is applicable. It's okay for psychology, but is it applicable in a management setting?
All right. Okay. So my question, I don't look at the relationship as if in quantitative, whether it's significant or not. I'm looking at how they interplay, how like in the dark images, right? It's not about how it's different with quantitative, yeah. And with the black dark, because she explained it by herself that what she meant with the black dark was the corrupt officer. So that's why then when we use visual method, we need to ask people to explain what they meant by the drawing, because otherwise we can interpret the image differently. When she showed the image, she say so that there are black, there are white people, there are white duck, there are black duck. I asked them what do you mean by black duck, and she was shy. She said naughty employee. What do you mean by naughty employee? She was shy, and then because it's in the focus group, then her friends help her to answer the question.
Right.
Yeah, and what she meant was corruption, not other people.
But what's the exact advantage of using this kind of method compared to just give people like a anonymous survey, for example, anonymous question? It's the same qualitative research, but what would be the advantage of your approach? It seems like you're assessing the subjectivity that has a lot of complexity.
We can get more rich and detailed explanation. Like if I use survey, will black and white that will emerge from the survey? No. So that's the question. That's the answer.
Like we can ask them in the open question, like please describe about your acquaintance or something, a subordinate, and people can just elaborate with using word. Like, how does that differ than the
Yes, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
But in the image, the data is rich. Like, see, can explain in one still image how the organizational change can change the muddy duck into the white duck. But yeah, I don't think I can get that in survey. Right? Okay, thank you. The last question.
Alice's question.
Yeah, about the visual. So, beside the drawing, I also use photograph. But in the photograph, I didn't do it in group. I did it individually. So I asked them to take a photograph, and then I interviewed them individually. So I think if I could have done my research differently, I might do that as well with the drawing. I might invite some of the members of the group for individual interview, because in the interview I can get more time to ask more detail about. There might be some information which cannot be captured in the image, which I can ask during the interview.
Could I ask one general question about salaries? Because if you look at something like the commuter train service, and you interview a middle manager, and you say, what was it like? Is it better now for you than it was 6 years ago? And he said, yeah, it's much better. It's and my salary 6 years ago was 3 million a month for being a middle manager. It's now 15 million. But there is a condition. And the condition is that I turn up on time, I can't smoke while I'm on picket duty, and if I make a small error, I'm going to be out of a job. And the same thing was told to me by the people I work with in the DKI. I don't do this exhibit, I'm going to lose my job. Yeah? I mean, how far is, besides the political context, is it a question of the professionalization of the Indonesian middle class?
Yes, salary in my data comes much. They think that it's one of the factors which reduce corruption. Like the gray people in the past, they were involved in corruption because the salary was very low. They said that's not human. We couldn't live. We couldn't live with that amount of salary. That's why, like some said it's corruption by need, because they need to give their family, to support their family. So yeah, they thought. But also now after the change, with you're right, they increase salary, but also they apply punishment, which is more like strict.
Yes. Draconian. I mean, I came in on a Friday, and by Monday, the person I was working with had been sacked.
Yes. If they are late, the salary will be cut. Yes.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm Hasmadi. I come from International Islamic University, Kuala Lumpur. I just very curious question here. You have been mentioning about a militarized, non-governmental organization looking after the security of the ports. Could it be possible that the same group with guns could also jump on ships and take over ships? Because there's the Malacca Straits that is also frequently with piracy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just open it out to anybody else.
Just a very quick one, if I may. Sanya, was there any evidence around whether the paramilitary groups are sort of national networks, or whether they're very much set in the local context? Do they have those connections? And I also wondered, in terms of the Gaius case, was there any evidence of whether this acted as an accelerant for further reform or whether it sort of knocked things back a bit?
Anybody else? Your last chance? Drinking your last chance to... Go ahead.
I will start with the robbery gun ships. Normally these groups, when they operate, they don't, they are unarmed, so their weapons is a lot more like simpler, like machetes or knives, for example. They've been I mean, in certain parts of Indonesia, they've been approached by the Indonesian Navy forces they give them understanding so they won't carry out any sea robbery attacks, for example, and they've been closely monitored. But also they've been used for effort to deal with anti-armed robbery against ships, because sometimes they can use just like boats and go to the sea and do robbery. Now they do like far stricter measures. It's not necessarily those that part of the civilian paramilitary groups. It could be just the local people who live near the straits. But now the government have carried out like a new policy. So every boats in different parts of that area that being considered as where the pirates come from, they have to paint the boat. So for example, for Batam, they have to paint it white, and then each boat have to be registered. If from Tanjung Balai Karimun, they have to paint it with yellow. And the Navy come there, and if they found boat that not being registered or being painted, they will confiscate the boat. So they've been doing it since like last year, because the number of armed robbery attacks in Indonesia have increased from 100 the year before to 300, but now it's decreasing. And these paramilitary groups, some of them have really national networks like Pemuda Pancasila, Pemuda Pancamarga, FKPPI, for example. They have their national network. Brigade Manguni try to build their national networks. However, the Brigade Manguni have a paramilitary wing. Their paramilitary wing only exists in North Sulawesi. So the other part of Indonesia is just for cultural, so where the Minahasan people gathers and they have their cultural activities there. So it depends on the area, but normally in the Tanjung Pinang is normally really local, and the groups that involve in the criminal activities, they are normally gathered around very specific, very closely knit society, so very local context. Only those who live in that port area, only those that live in certain villages.
Thank you for the question. There was a reflection. They said that despite all of the effect of the Gaius case to the organization, there are lessons learned that there is a hole in the reform which need to be improved. But Gaius, actually, he didn't play in the internal of the organization, because like the case was in the court text, Pengadilan Pajak, which is outside the organization. But still, there is reflection from my participant. And after that case, they, like the organization, they make some of prevention tools. One of them was whistleblowing system. So they ask the employee to report their friends or colleague if they see something going on. Although my finding shows that not everybody wants to report their friend. But also they felt pity for them. So they prefer reminding the college instead of reporting them. But also there is one participant who talked about evaluation, because at the initial stage of the reform, when the pilot project was done, he said it was like in the microscope. So they really put their attention to the pilot project. They did regular evaluation on how it went, but over time I think they make it less and less. Maybe because they thought that it's already changed, but yeah, it's their reflection that they need to do it regularly to evaluate how the reform has gone.
Thank you very much. Excellent panel. Well done. Thank you for sharing. And York obviously has a very strong
Nanti diulang lagi BSD. Iya sih.
Iya kan sih. Ini supervisornya ngirim email ke kita tuh.
Iya, sama. Cuma nggak datang.
Kirim email ke kita.
You're waiting for your Viva.
Bersama sama panelnya, terus mau diskusi.
Very
Nggak ada ya
interesting to
tadi?
see this recent.
Ya datang kemarin-kemarin mungkin waktu itu kan jadwal sama aktuasinya ya walaupun kedodoran saja wah ini panik tapi kita cobain aja quiz gitu ada satu yang datang pergi terus paling lama aku sih sama teman-teman jadi kemarin kita rombongan ini ya kita paksain dengan harusnya di jadwal aslinya
Kemarin awal banget kan Jumat.
Iya. Sabtu siang.
Jadi itu di Sabtu siang bulan. Jam 9.
Untuk sih nggak beli tiket duluan kayak dia kalau kayak gitu kan pas-pas juga. Ya teman saya akhirnya satu nggak harus PP setiap hari PPH. Untung London sih nggak cuman ya capek juga.
Aku itu dapat Airbnb gitu, kalau malam banget. Aku udah 30 anak
Untung diganti sih, tapi masih jauh.
Nginep pas mampir London.
Oke lah, teman lama.
Simpan dulu. Gue diisi dulu ya. Oh iya, makasih. Punya kartu nama nggak Mbak Sen? Oh, dari itu aja lah ya. Dari buku aja. Oh, dari kali ya. Baik. Dulu.
Ada kartu nama nggak?
Oh iya, thank you. Aku ada kayaknya. Tapi di mana ya?
Nanti saya email aja.
Oh iya, boleh. With my business card. Yeah, thank you very much for your card.
Tapi pada kemarin saya sekali enggak ada. Tapi ada kan email di buku itunya ya nanti.
Thank you so much.
Tiga malam nanti malam belum. Udah tiga dari pertama. Kemarin pagi.
Iya, aku nggak nonton. Aku cuma sehari.
Ya, tadi cerita sama Darius dia juga sama satu lagi. Suska tadi aku juga mereka kemarin. Iya, Kirawiri juga. London kan?
Juga
dapat funding. Aku dari Kepalutan. Yang dari Spirit itu udah terpakai.
So this is the last session.
Aku malah belum yang dari Spirit, makanya aku
Dipakai. Sekarang rugi kan cuma dalam negeri. Harusnya yang nggak jauh. Kalian Australia. Tapi nggak sebanyak itu sih memang.
Are you starting immediately or what?
Spirit langsung dikasih info kan katanya.
In total sebenarnya cost tapi makanya itu kalau kita cuma deket ya rugi juga soalnya cuma kesempatan nyairin sekali jadi kalau untuk dipakai
pakai sekali, mending yang gede sekalian. Nah, kalau yang kecil-kecil ini kan masih bisa cari dari mana-mana atau A, B, C, Kalau yang itu sayang sekali kalau dipakai untuk yang
sedikit ini ya. Oh gitu. Makanya pakai pemerintah gitu. Pakai pemerintah biar kita masih lebih banyak yang masuk, tapi pasti dibayarnya pemerintah juga.
ya asal